that was a little bit better. But I want everybody to stand up. Yes, yes. And we're going to try this one more time. Because there's people over there in those buildings that we're going door knocking later. Just joking. But you want them to hear you. So one more time. Who are we? ACORN! Who are we? ACORN! Who are we? ACORN! All right. And what are you? We are fired up!
You won't take it no more!
Y'all done forgot. Y'all old shit.
Forgot.
One more time. Here we go. We can't take it no more. We're fired up. Can't take it no more. We're fired up. Can't take it no more. We're fired up. All right. I know this is the old generation, but y'all did the best you could. All right, ACORN.
Thank you, Bertha. We'll hear from Bertha in a bit too. So, thanks everyone for coming. What we're doing is bringing people together for two events tonight that are closely related, separated by a meal, but really not separated. First, we'll be spending the next hour commemorating John's life 10 years after he passed away, and we're really, really, really so thrilled you've come to join us in doing that. John followed me down to Arkansas in 1976, 75, 76. And you'll hear more about his 35 years with ACORN and then with NYCC in a bit. And then second, we're celebrating and commemorating all of our time with ACORN, which of course John would have loved to do as well, and that was such a huge part of John's life. So two events wrapped up into one. And let me just review the agenda with folks, the program, so everyone knows what to expect. First, as I mentioned, we're going to be focusing on John. We have a few speakers, 7 or 8 speakers who are going to be talking about John and John's work. And that'll be first up. And then after that, we actually have an amazing spread of food that is being set up right now. So it should be ready at 5:30, and we will be eating then. And then midway through dinner, we will start the ACORN portion of the agenda, and we have a few people who will be saying a few words, but really the ACORN agenda is, we want to hear from everybody. And people are, I'm sure you came with some stories, some memories, some things you want to celebrate from your time at ACORN. We want to hear all about that too. And then we're actually here, we have this space till 9, so there'll be plenty of time for hanging out and visiting and getting to spend time with each other, which of course I think is what a lot of people are interested in doing. So that's the program. Let me just say that my sort of co-conspirator, co-organizer in putting this together, Fran, is unfortunately home with COVID and did not want to but we have there's a Zoom line. She is watching. We'll be able to put her on the screen. Yeah, so we are so sorry about that, but anyway, so when you're talking, know that you're also talking to Fran. He is definitely watching us. All right, so, but there are other folks here that I just want to mention quickly before we get started. part of our family, our immediate family. So in addition to Fran, who's watching, John's son Jake and his wife Celeste are here. Also, John's niece and my daughter Anna and her husband Anna. John's sister, my sister Amy, is here. His sister-in-law Kate and her husband Jeff are here. And my wife Kenny is here. So, and of course, Jessie, John and Fran's daughter, is with us in spirit, absolutely. And all of us really are connected to John through blood, through marriage, and of course you're all connected to him as well, through this work that we all have done together. So we're, again, glad you're here. We're going to hear from a few of John's colleagues and comrades. I think Jonathan Weston is first up. And you can either come up to the front and speak to this mic, or we can. We also have some portable mics. What?
Oh, all right. Wow, this is an incredible room. Hey, Julia, glad you made it. It's great to be here with everybody. So for folks that don't know me, I'm Jonathan Weston. I was the director of New York Communities for Change for the last 10 years. Recently just stepped down this summer. Lucas Sanchez is over here as the new director, and I don't know where Olivia is. Yeah, so many amazing people and faces in this room. I think we're just going to do like short things about John. And the main thing that I go back to over and over and over when I think about John is mostly like, are you fucking this up? And it's a question I ask myself constantly over the past 10 years, and I'm sure there's lots of times I did fuck it up. There's also lots of times we did some pretty good stuff. So, I think in thinking about the past 10 years, and even just like, what's been happening globally, I really do think about how John, I think it was 2011, when Occupy Wall Street was happening, and what really was the beginning of the kind of populist wave that has taken over globally, in some ways, like, actual populism, trying to get things for people who need it, and then obviously in the other extreme, blatant fascism. And I feel like I go back to those moments where Occupy was really just this like couple kids sleeping in the park, whatever. And think about it, John actually understood the moment and where we all were. And I think about like, how would he be organizing in this moment to get to where we need to go? And I think a lot of that has guided me in my career as an organizer is, do we just sit back, or do we just keep pushing as far as we can? And I think that's the thing I go back to over and over. I'm like, I know, should I cave to this like motherfucker? No, I probably won't. Let's just keep going and keep pushing. And I think that's one of the lessons I go back to the most with John is like just unrelenting, ability to keep going and be uncompromising. So I don't know who I'm turning it to, Steve.
Bertha, I think we're ready to hear from you.
I guess y'all saying hello again.
We're assuming there's 4 or 5 more turns.
All right. So,
Yes, Julia, I actually am looking nice. I know we're supposed to be talking about John, but Julia Boyd and Dorothy Amati. When I first came to ACORN, I was older than everybody else, and these two women tortured me for years, but they made me the woman I am today. So let's talk about John. So I'm just going to talk about what happened with me. My first day on the job, I came in reeking of alcohol. Yes, I can confess it now, but it was quite traumatic at the time. I had been locked up overnight for assaulting a police officer. Can you believe that? Me? But I had, and I was locked up with a bunch of pickpockets and prostitutes and stuff, and actually got in very late. I was messed up. And John, you know, you guys remember, he would just look at you like you know, like idiot. Remember that? He'd call you an idiot. And he said, I don't know about you. So you're going to have to prove yourself. And that is what I did every single day, trying to win this man's approval for over 20 years. But it helped me and it made me, because I think he was had a little chuckle when I told him I was arrested for assaulting a police officer. So he was like, yeah. But, and the other thing was, John put me at a broken down desk. The desk was broken, the drawers didn't work, the chair wobbled, and he handed me a cardboard box. And he said, sign these people up. I had no training. I knew nothing about this organization except I went to a convention once and I thought they were all part of a cult and they were all crazy. And I would just call people. I didn't know what to say. I would make it up. And it was in the loan counseling department. And this woman, this one night, I was so frustrated. I was ready to quit. And this woman had already gotten her house. And she said, I don't have to join anything. It's all free. I got my house. Something snapped. I said, Judge, you parasite. How dare you? You know, our ACORN members will never be able to buy a house, never. And you just are trying to suck the life out of them. You know, I should come over there and kick your ass right now. And slam the phone down. I went into John's office. Mr. Kest, I'm sorry. And I'm going to quit. Because I know you're going to fire me because this woman is going to call you up and tell you that I cursed her out. John Kest looked at me and he said, that's what she said? We wouldn't want her to be an ACORN member. So, I only had 3 minutes. He knew that was not going to work. Here I am.
Thank you very much.
Hey, I'm Karen Scharf. Thank you. For 35 years I've done Citizen Action in New York. I came home to New York to build Citizen Action in 1983, right around the same time that John and Fran came to New York to build New York ACORN. And I met John occasionally at a few different coalition meetings, but I'd say for the first 15 years I knew John, he pretty much made fun of Citizen Action and otherwise ignored me. And then no surprise to anyone in this room. And then in 1998, my master convinced John that if he wanted to build Working Families Party, they needed Citizen Action. So they roped me in, along with Dan and Bill, and building Working Families Party together really forced us to work together and get to know each other. And John then became really one of my closest partners for the next 14 years. First with building WP, and then with creating the Alliance for Quality Education, which brought together ACORN's New York City parents with Citizen Action's upstate parents to win school funding. And we even raised money for each other's organizations, a true transition in trust. But of course, John still made fun of Citizen Action, and he also always kept very close tabs on who had the most votes on the Working Families Party Steering Committee, because there was like no way in hell that John was ever going to allow Citizen Action to have more votes than ACORN. I think we kind of got even at some point. But WP and AQE were, of course, two of John's biggest game-changing strategies in New York, but he always had many others. He always had the next play in mind. And the thing that, as you all know about John, is he wasn't just brilliant strategically, but he was also just relentless. He was often the first person I heard from in the morning on the phone, unless it was Billy. And we'd be back and forth into the night, and he was like just constantly always thinking about how to escalate, how to move things to the next level. He was always working the phones to make it happen. He never thought we were doing enough, no matter how hard we were working. He just felt our success depended on working harder than anyone else, and so it always had to be more. And Classic John, one of my favorite versions of that, Classic John, a few weeks before the end of the 2011 budget fight, which was Andrew Cuomo's first budget, where we were completely getting screwed, John insisted that we had to bring 1,000 people to the state capitol, and we had to sleep over and stay there until the budget was done, partly to be like a last stand and a little bit of a wake-up call, but also, of course, it was the first action for the next campaign. I honestly kind of thought we'd already done our last big push. I was kind of ready to be done. John, as usual, talked us into it. We did indeed turn out 1,000 people to the capitol. We camped out overnight. It turned out to be a pretty intense night. I'll never forget sitting with John and Billy on the $1 million staircase, which, for those of you who are not from New York, is kind of like the center of the Capitol. Huge staircase for a site of many rallies. And it's like maybe around 1 a.m., and we're trying to figure out our exit strategy so people can kind of just sleep the rest of the night in the Capitol. And John had decided in the end that just to make sure we had a big enough turnout, he was going to recruit all the college students he'd been working with to come. So we had a ton of SUNY students who were great. But they really wanted to get arrested, and we had all of the, ACORN grandmas there who really were not prepared to get arrested and needed to go home the next morning. So we spent a long time on the staircase trying to talk the students out of it. The SUNY students were great. They came around, they're like, yes, we want to respect our elders. But there was these random radicals from Vassar who had nothing to do with anything, who were like determined that they were going to get arrested for the cause that night. We managed to avoid it barely, but the Capitol Police were very on edge. And I'm going to turn it to Billy to continue the story.
Okay, thanks, Sharon. Hi, Karen. Billy Easton. I was the director of AQE for about 15 years. And actually, Bertha, I was glad to hear about that. Bertha, I was glad you told the story about the desk, because now I know where it came from when we had our office in the ACORN building. It's like John gave us a closet and said, here, you guys can spend some money and rehab it, and here's Bertha's old desk. But in the Capitol, at the Capitol campus, right? There was this. This was before the whole scene on the $1 million staircase. There was the issue of, we ordered like 70 pizzas to feed everybody. We get them delivered, and it got pretty intense because Governor Andrew Cuomo. Anyone remember him? We can be louder than that. Come on. That's right. So he did not want the pizzas to get into the Capitol building. And I kid you not. We had two lawyers, Mark Mishler and Michael Kink, negotiating with the governor's council over the pizzas getting into the Capitol building. And then the governor's council were then going back and talking to the governor about what would it take to get the pizzas into the Capitol building. And, it was very intense negotiations. I remember John was like, we're going to get those pizzas in. This is where we're going to draw the line. We cannot give an inch on these pizzas. They have to get in. And you know, we had the pizzas. There's this thing called Pizza Jail, where there is this opening in the Capitol, and the pizzas were in the opening, and there were 2 people in there with the pizzas, but they couldn't get out. They couldn't go in or out, in or out. And we're outside chanting, "No pizzas, no peace! No pizzas, no peace! No pizzas, no peace!" And finally we're like, wait, there's like cartloads of food coming to the Capitol building. How's that happening? And it's like, well, those are for the senators and the assembly people. We're like, well, we go up to the troopers, we're like, we want to get the food in. They got their food in. They're like, only if you're a senator or an assembly person. So we got 2 senators. You gotta get the food. You gotta get the pizzas. They go down. They're like, I'm like, they'll let us in. The captain's like, they have to bring it in themselves. Sure enough, they go out there. They bring it in. We had the pizzas. It was a victory for justice, or at least for our stomachs. Really quick, on that staircase that Karen was talking about, they were like sitting there. Get out of here, old men and old women. Get out of here. It's like you were on the other side of the you can't trust anyone over 25 divide. But we did convince them, and it worked out. It was a good thing because I kid you not, there were like 100 state troopers who were like all like, they used to be tight ends for the New York Giants, who were walking around the building. They were ready to arrest us. So fortunately, we made it through, and the pizza did too.
All right, we have a quick video that we're going to show that is a tribute to John.
When you hear the name John Kest, you immediately think organizing.
John Kest is the secret sauce. In every fight for social and economic justice, he is the substantive policy recommendation. He is the talk to this one and then this one so you can get this one. He is the small bore, medium bore, large bore glue that holds these movements together.
Because anyone who's worked with John for any stretch of time has sought him out, first of all, for advice about organizing, about political strategy, about hanging in there, or about cleaning up a mess and moving on.
You know, he is the person who never wants to be in front of the room, who never is looking for the accolades. He's never looking for the quote in the paper.
Although he was the leader, he would let the members tell the story. He didn't tell the story. He said, it's your community, you get up there and you tell your community and tell your official what you want in your community.
The campaigns that he has picked and directed me and us on really are the most important ones in my life and in the city over the last 20 years.
Yo, Brad!
I met John, wow, probably back in 1983. I had just become deputy borough president in Brooklyn. And John and Fran and a number of other people from ACORN did a sit-in in our office, probably my first one. So it was, back then, with ACORN, swatting and trying to get homes for people out in East New York and
Sometime in 1997, it said, we should form a new political party. And I was like, you're crazy, that'll never work, but let's try anyway. He has made a tremendous difference in this town, whether it's education issues, housing issues, most recently empowering workers in low-wage occupations, and certainly being the best partner that anybody could have in building the Working Families Party.
John Kest was one of the founders of the Alliance for Quality Education and has always been there to push the envelope. We can admit that at times he is all the charm of a grumpy old man, but he is also a great strategist with a big heart, a friend you can always count on, and a person from whom I have learned a ton.
It was his idea to really push for a long-term labor event for October 5th, would help define the Occupy movement and the collaboration between community and labor, and pushing the narrative of economic justice.
There's a group of sayings and phrases that all of us at NYCC are
are used to from John that we refer to as Kestisms. I think we've all heard, guys, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. This is a marathon, not a sprint. But this is so not my responsibility. There's one phrase that we all know, and it's probably John's most famous line. It is,
feeling like my food and my snacks. Or I come back and like my whole popcorn be gone and John's over there like Johnny, that's my snacks.
I was trying to think of what my story would be. And I think that it's the time that we ordered sushi and I was in a staff meeting and when I came out, you ate my lunch. I was so hungry, it's so sad. And then I saw the look on your face and I couldn't be mad at you for 1 second.
Shortly after I met you, when you hired some new organizers to organize web workers, and I came in to tell you that one of them was very young, only 19 years old. And it took you a split second to say, exactly half your age, Ann.
Nobody's better at insulting you on email than John Kest. In a very friendly, loving, but quite sharp way sometimes.
John is a person that you can combatively go back and forth with, and at the end of the day, wind up doing what he tells you to do, and you don't know why. And at the end of the day, you're able to come to a vision together on something that is both compelling and just movement building.
It has been wonderful watching you over the years, how you've worked with bastions of industry and politics and moved systems around to better the lifestyle for people here in the city, the state, and on into other states.
I've known John Kest for since 1989, through which time he has proven to be a very wonderful human being who always put others first.
Everything that he does, you don't have to do it. But he wanted to help everyone. He wanted to be there for everyone, to help everyone. So he's out there helping whoever he could.
I just remember from the beginning, the many, many times that you helped me see a better path, a more creative, a more aggressive, a more progressive path.
37 years ago, you were the best organizer in Arkansas, which was hard for me to admit at the time. And you are the best organizer of your generation.
So I think the best part for me of all these years working together has really been the strategy sessions that we've had. A few of us when we get together, often for breakfast or over a meal, or we've been in the office, and we just figure out what kind of strategy or tactics we're going to do for a particular campaign. But mostly, we just have so much fun.
You helped us found the organization ACORN back in 1971, I believe. And I just wanted to tell you, we loved you then, we love you now. And what has happened over the years has helped a lot of people.
I love you. I thank you for all of the thousands of people you've touched and made this such a better place to live in.
You are a man of many men. I am so honored and so proud to have walked beside you in so many different cities. I am honored to be in your presence. And I stand to applaud you with thousands of other people across the nation, not just the city.
Thank you for teaching me and having more of an impact on my life than really anyone in the last 11 or 12 years.
Outside of my family, there has not been a bigger influence in my life. He's someone who shaped my worldview and somebody who has made me think bigger and really think more strategically and creatively about how we can affect real change in this city and in this state.
Good evening. Whew, you have to forgive me, but I'm doing all right. Now I want to talk to you, John, because I know you're sitting up there, and I know Jesse's on your side. And I want to tell you at least one of the stories about me and you, and see if maybe we can solve one of the problems. I remember John coming into the neighborhood, and me being a big shot, a leader of the neighborhood, doing what I thought was the right thing to get my community what they needed. Here come this young man got the nerve to tell me, I'm here to help you get what you need for your community. I said, let me tell you one thing. I don't know who you are, but you're the wrong person and you're the wrong color, so you can't tell me. He said, color has nothing to do with it. Me being young has nothing to do with it. I'm here to help you strengthen your community, because little old lady, you ain't got no money, so how you gonna win any points of getting what you need? I said, well, I'm great because I belong to one of the biggest organizations there is, and I know we're doing the right thing. He said, have you progressed? I said, not really, but it takes time. He said, how long? I said, well, we've been doing it 20 years, maybe in the next 5 years, we will get somewhere. He said, well, I think that since you ain't got no money, you got a big mouth, you don't know what you're talking about, let me help you. I said, how can you help me? He said, just listen. Your problem is, little old lady, you don't listen. So right now, let's get something straight. You shut up a while, and I'll tell you how I can help you. I said, okay. He said, come to my office tomorrow at 10 o'clock with $24. So I thought he thought I was a cougar. I didn't. $24? I said, well, what did I need $24 for? He said to join the organization. I said, for $24? I said, okay, I'll think about it. So the next morning I got up and I went to the office. I looked around and I said, where's the office? And I saw this dirty little dingy building. And I'm saying, I know you don't want my $24 to come in. So I went in and the dust was all over everything, and I said, this is an office. It's nothing like the office that I've been going to, so I don't think I'm gonna enjoy this. So here he comes, him, Steve, Kate, Frank. And I'm saying, I don't see nobody in my color. He said, do I have to be your color to help you? I said, well, we have to all stick together. He said, well, that's why I'm here. I'm sticking with you to show you how you can get everybody up on one accord to stick together. Because if you don't, there's no need of us to be here. Because little old lady, once again, you ain't got no money. Did you bring my $24? Oh. So I said, yes, I got the $24. And he said, well, whether you like to join or not, you're joining. So I gave him $24. He gave me things here, and I was a member. He said, the first thing we're gonna do, we're going to go house to house and tell people to join. I said, you got to be crazy. I gave you my $24. You're supposed to do it for me. He said, no, it don't work that way. We work together. I'm here to show you how to go in your neighborhood, get acquainted with your neighbors, and tell them, let's join together to better our condition and get what we want. I said, well, I'll just cuss a few people out and maybe we'll get somewhere. He said, that's not the way you do it. You have to plan what to plan. I gave you $24, but I have to do planning. You do it. He said it don't work that way. So long, I'm not gonna stay because I got a whole lot of more stories. But to make a long story short, it took this young white fellow to come into the neighborhood, get this big shot that belonged to all these organizations down to a level that she finally realized she wasn't doing nothing for the neighborhood until he came along and showed me what to do. And I had to say, you win, mister.
Thank you, Judy. And now, public advocates in New York.
What's up, ACORN? How y'all doing? Long live ACORN. I gotta tell you, it's exciting to come here and see all the ACORN paraphernalia. I saw Brad in the back. Can you imagine if John Kest knew we were going to be the public advocate and comptroller of the city of New York? That's freaking amazing. That is amazing. My day was pretty packed up, and I got daddy duty. But when I heard what it was for, I'm sorry, I don't know if I got back to you. but I'm here. I said, come hell or high water, I have to make sure I'm here for the John Kest Memorial. I don't have any one funny story, but I know I wouldn't be here without ACORN, I wouldn't be here without John Kest, and that's really important. Where's Buffer? I remember I think Bertha, you know me from when I was a tenants and neighbors at Starrett City. And then I said I wanted to be, I was thinking about running for city council. Bertha got so excited, I thought she was blowing smoke on my ass. Like she got ridiculously excited. Really? Oh my God, you gotta meet this WP and these folks? And I thought she was joking. And I met a whole bunch of folks, including John Kest. And he was an organizer. And someone said, I can't remember who it was, but those of us who like to be in the front, and I didn't see the nigga over there, I see we need people like John who are happy in the back, and that's important. And he was a consummate organizer, always focused and focused and focused. And so I'm thankful that we're here today celebrating not just his life, his legacy. I know at his passing, he was still organizing around the world. I helped organize a Wendy's. I got the Wendy's shut down. I felt so bad, I thought I got the people fired. Like, oh my God. But he was so ahead of his time on so many of his things, and he attracted a lot of troublemakers like us. I remember him and Emma and so many folks, and I'm excited that we're celebrating his life and his legacy. And to the end, he was organizing. I remember I have a good friend, is my brother of mine, Kest and John Foy, and we went to his house, and John was visibly sick. And we were trying to talk to him and stay focused on him. And I remember him looking and saying to Kirsten, we got to get you elected. That was one of the last things I remember him saying. He stayed focused to the end. And to look at this room and look at New York City politics, you see the impact of John Kest, and that is amazing. And when all of us go, what's going to be said in that dash in between, it's going to be interesting. But for John Kest, we are all that dash, and all this stuff is amazing because of him. So thank you so much. Peace and blessings, everyone. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimani. It's always great to have you join us. Bill Lipton, Bob Master. It's great to be here, see a lot of folks haven't seen in a while. Julia, you know, it's always, when Julia met my mom, she was like, you know, that's my son. And my mom was totally confused by that. I'll start by just saying the thing about John, I think that many of us experienced, was his ability to peer into the future, see a vision for what could be, and then will it to happen. To bend history a little bit towards this vision. And it, you know, it's a kind of remarkable thing to be around, and you learn from him and see it, because at the beginning you're like, that can't happen, and also I can't do all the stuff he's asking us to do, right? And then, you know, you learn and you grow. My story started in 1996, and after a year of working with the new party under John, I had totally had enough. And I was like, I sat down to tell him, look, there's so much I don't agree with, you know, the office is dingy, I'm out of here. And about 20 minutes later, he had convinced me that we were going to form a new political party in New York State with a ballot line, and I was going to be the lead organizer, and it was going to be completely exciting. And I walked out of there ready to work on building the Working Families Party in New York, and then I spent the next 25 years doing it. So John had that kind of impact, I think, on a lot of people. A lot of people have commented that it takes a while for John to warm up to you, and that is certainly true for me. It took a couple, not as long as Karen. I think Karen said 15 years or 10 years, but it took a couple of years, and I do remember the night that it happened, because it really had an impact on me. We were both at the office at actually we were driving into the city at 11 o'clock at night to drop off 60,000 petitions into a bus, you know, the big trunks of the bus, to go up to Albany, where someone was going to get these things and secure our ballot line, you know, our position on the ballot in order to get the ballot line. And I just remember driving in with him, and this guy who, you know, had kind of not been very friendly over the last couple of years. We just started talking, and he goes, God, this is so hard. I just miss my family so much. And it was the first time I really saw a different side of him. And we just started talking, and we became friends at that point, and became close. And that just stayed with me over the years, so I wanted to share it. But the thing that, you know, I always think about with John, just to circle back, is he taught us what we could do. You know, I had no idea when I went in there that the visions, the kind of visions and hopes and aspirations that he had for campaigns were imaginable. But he kind of pushed you out there. He gave you some support, but there was a lot of pushing. He threw you in, and you ended up, you know, a lot of times being able to do these pretty extraordinary things. And without him and his vision and his guidance and support, you know, I just think my life would have been completely different. And I think a lot of people in this room feel that way. So.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Steve. My name is Bob Master. I was the political director for the Communications Workers of America for, I don't know, a long time, 30 years, and worked with John on founding the Working Families Party. I just wanted to talk very briefly about the very specific way in which I feel like I have missed John over the last 10 years. And I can't separate that from what the last 10 years have been.
right? If we think about it for a moment, stop and take stock, it has been a remarkable political decade, right? I mean, obviously the explosion of the Fight for 15, which John and so many of you were deeply involved in, 2 Bernie campaigns, a Warren campaign, the election of Trump, Black Lives Matter, you know, the George Floyd movement, Striketober, you know, a little mini uprising in the labor movement, and then, you know, January 6th and the real threat of reaction. And I feel like for me, those of you who know me know I would end up on the pessimistic side of most of my calculations at various points, but I think for a lot of us, we oscillated between incredible hope and optimism. Socialism is coming. You know, Bernie Sanders, more votes for a socialist candidate than anyone in American history. And then, you know, a few months later, be like, no, actually, fascism is coming. And we wouldn't be wrong, right? So, and the thing that was remarkable about John to me, I mean, everybody's talked about his strategic brilliance, I mean, his ability to push the envelope, but to me, what John was really brilliant at was navigating the tightrope between hope and possibility and pushing the envelope and knowing when to make the deal. And John made deals with people like Mike Bloomberg, right? Wasn't afraid to make a deal. You know, he could think expansively, but he also knew when to pull back. And I feel like over the last 10 years, I at least have been confused at many points and thinking like, what would John have thought? Should we keep pushing? Is it a time to pull back? Is the greatest danger being isolated, or is the greatest danger making a compromise that's unwarranted? And so, you know, we have all in our work muddled through over these last 10 years. We've made a bunch of mistakes and we've had a lot of victories. I feel like there have been so many times when I have missed John's counsel about the possibility of a particular moment. And, you know, we'll continue to muddle forward, but John's absence has made us that much poorer at making those calculations along the way. And that's my recollection of John's great contribution and the way in which I miss him the most.
Is Marie Pierre here? Marie? Yes. Marie Pierre, New York, ACORN, NYCC.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll be short, don't worry. I'll start with a joke. When we were coming on the bus, we picked up Leroy, and Leroy said, "Look at how I'm dressed." And we're going to an ACORN function. I said, "No, we're going to honor John Kest. You ever see John Kest dress?" So don't worry, you will be in place. Don't care what it was. It could be the governor's ball. John is not dressed, but everybody covers around him, so sometimes it's not the dress, right? I remember in 1989, I joined New York, ACORN, and everybody previously spoke about how the office looked. But I remember the first summer I went up, everybody was fanning. We had to walk up some rickety steps. And I remember going to John and saying, "John, what happened? We don't have enough money to pay for AC?" He said, "Well, possibly if we go in there and bring in some more members, we'll be much cooler next summer." And of course, previous guests spoke about his tunnel vision. He had tunnel vision. And he was so calm. And the first time I asked, "Well, who's the director?" He said, "That guy in there." I said, "Wow." He's a guy who likes to work behind the scenes, but he moves mountains. And one of the things I remember when I became the chair of New York ACORN, I was nervous, and he called me in the office and he said, don't worry, you have a lot of potential, and I see you are a leader, and everybody will help you, so don't get any cold feet. And the only bad encounter, I wouldn't say a bad encounter, but the only rift I had with him is because an organizer, I used to be the chair of East New York, and this organizer, it was Harold, by the way. Is Harold here? Harold came to me and said, you know, John said we have to push for getting members, and we have to tell them about housing. I said, you're crazy? He said, no, we might have to, talk a little bit about housing. I said, you're crazy? We can't sell houses because we know the deal. He said, well, we'll try. I said, leave it up to me. The next day I went in the office, I said, John, we have to have a little talk. He said, what happened, Marie? That's one thing I could say he respected his board members. As soon as you stepped into the door, he put down his, whatever he was on, and he said, come in, you have a problem? I said, yes. I have a problem with us trying to sell housing. And we know the direction of the organization, and we know how difficult it is, especially when this mayor got in, help me, Giuliani. When Giuliani got in, the whole housing thing was a mess. And I said, no, I'm not going to sell housing to my members. He said, you know what, Marie? You're right. I said, maybe we can talk a little about housing as an afterthought eventually, but we have to sell other things. And, I want to tell Fran, because Gloria Waldron, one of our New York ACORN chairs, said to tell Fran that anytime she thinks of John, she lifts up a prayer for her to keep stronger and to keep on. Thank you.
You mentioned Harold, so Harold and Amelia, you're next up. It's funny that I'm next because the backstory to that, what Marie was talking about, he called me into the office right before Marie came and he said, what the F did you tell her? I said, John, I said, we're going to try to get these flyers out and try to convince about this housing thing. He said, well, he just shook his head like, okay, I don't have time. So anyway, it's a true honor for me to be here and see everyone here. It's like a second family reunion. I have a small family, and this is like my ACORN family. It's like really dope to see everyone. Some folks I haven't seen in a long time. And, I try to think about different stories and there's so many and too many for me to and then some are not appropriate to share amongst this crowd. But one of the things that a lot of you might have remembered, I left New York City for a 5-year period. I went upstate New York. And the thing is that John hated it. He absolutely hated the fact that I left. And he'll call me every month to say when I'm coming back to New York City. And he'll do everything he could to have me come back. He said, well, there's this campaign. This is 2009. He said, there's this campaign. This guy named de Blasio's working, you want to come back to New York and work on it? At first I said, nope. And then I get a call from de Blasio and Emma Wolf. And they talked me into coming back down for the summer. Best experience up to that point was to work on that campaign for a public advocate. And it had me thinking about possibly moving back to New York, but it took me another 4 years to move back. And it was not till the fast food campaign that convinced me to move back to New York permanently, which was best decision ever, because since then I was able to really do a lot of really cool work in the city.
not only working for the Blasio administration, but recently like the Charter Commission for bringing racial equity to New York City, the charter ballots. And you know, I credit my ACORN organizer. I text Bertha, I said, I wouldn't be able to pull this campaign off without the things I learned from my mama and my white dad. That's what I call John. Tanisha knows. You know, that's my nickname for him. I think only Tanisha, maybe Deshaun may know I refer to him as white dad, and Ashana Cumberbatch if she's here. I don't think she's here. But yeah, it was, you know, the work that we all have done in the last many years since his passing, all was reflective of a vision of building a power in the city and in the state. And I'm glad to be a part of it, just a small part of it, and carry a legacy that is so tremendous. But before I go, I have to tell this real quick story. When I was in Albany, Karen may remember the story when the state senate was taken over by the Republicans, a coup. Yeah, there was a coup that happened, for those who may not remember. And so we quickly gathered a handful of members. She had like about 50 members. I only had like 10 members at the time because that was a small operation. And we did this protest at the Capitol, you know, just to protest our, you know, discuss about like Espada and crew taking over the state senate. And then the New York Post the next day wrote an article saying that Citizen Action and ACORN rioted at the Capitol. Rioted. And so I get a call from John. He said, what the fuck are you doing over there? So I said, John, we had a combined 60 members. There's no way we could have rioted at the Capitol. But, you know, that's the Post for you. So it was like, you know, first of many stories that where the Post lied about something I'd done. So it's like, it's par for the course for me now. But no, every day I miss white dad. I miss his wisdom, miss his inappropriate jokes, talking about Mets over work emails, things that we probably can't do now in 2022 that we were doing back then. But you know, the work, the legacy carries on. So, $1 million.
I'll put this on. Hi, Julia. 10 years, still very raw for me. Amelia Adams, New York ACORN, education organizer, tenant organizer, legislative, and then political director. I wouldn't be here without my political parents. I also call John and Bertha. Bertha's also my brunch date, you know, every once in a while out in Brooklyn. But you know, there's all these political sayings, and Bertha and John, it's like, speak softly, but carry a big stick. And I'll let you figure out which one goes to which one. I could spend all night talking about what John Kest meant to me, but look at this room as a testament. There's no need to even begin that conversation, but John Kest had an amazing vision, and it's been spoken about, so I only talk about it very, very briefly. To start out a campaign, just petitioning at like McDonald's, talking about like housing and stuff like that, and then fast forward, literally that's what it was called, fast food forward. Fast forward to where the minimum wage was talked about at a presidential debate was just something that I think doesn't get enough credit for the contributions that John Kest had on the labor movement, and what is happening right now is truly remarkable. But, you know, I do want to thank John and Fran for not being stingy and teaching me everything that I use every single day in my life, in my work. And I remember when, you know, got paid at ACORN, which was nothing. And I was just like, I need to make more money. So I was like, you know, applying for jobs. But little did I know, John Kest knew everyone. He knew everyone in New York City. So one day, he's like, so you applied for this? I'm like, look at my email. He knew everyone. And we started a conversation, and he asked me what I wanted to do. And similar to how John has found talent in many of us and inspired us to go further, he did say to me, I'm not supposed to say this, but you're good, and I don't want to lose you. And I see you're going to be a powerhouse in New York City politics in the future. And he taught me every single day, and he handed me over his Rolodex, and I called every single elected official in the city council, and I went and had coffee with them, and that is because John believed in me and trusted me, and I still to this day, I'm gonna stop talking, because like I said, it's still very raw, and John Kest, I love you.
Now I'm going to hear from the Comptroller of the City of New York, Brad Lander.
Thank you, Steve, for organizing this, and everybody. Let's say thanks to Steve and to Brand for putting this together. It really is a blessing to get to be with you all. I first met John in the fall of 1992. I was like 22 or 23, and I went to apply for a job as an organizer. And I went to that rat warren at Flatbush and Church. But what I remember is less how dirty it was, and more what Peter and I were talking about. We would walk through the halls with John, and when people saw him coming, they'd be like back to the call, you know, because they had a long call list, and then afterwards they might slink down again, and they'd be like, and they had these long lists, and you could just see like they were, you know, gonna get judged by them. And we went out and we door knocked in some public housing that day, and I was exhausted at the end of it. And I did not go to work as an ACORN organizer, and yet, honestly, all these years later, like Bill and like Karen and like Bertha, I still feel like most days I'm just trying to win John's approval, and I'm really ready to be done with it, to be honest. But you really can't get past it. It was a few years later than that that we went to meet him at that Casillas de Jagua, that little diner on 7th and Flatbush. There were two of them, and you had to make sure you were at the right Casillas de Jagua. And we had this idea, so I went to work instead at Fifth Avenue Committee, which Karen was like way below citizen action on the John Kest hierarchy. Like that was really not a place anyone would go to work. So when we had this idea, which I really think that we stole Judith Goldner's idea, that we would tie the rent laws renewal, we would hold 421A hostage for the rent laws. And that was like the first time. I mean, he was still texting, but he looked up and he was like, all right, yeah. And like, we were like, oh my God, we got a strategic idea that we're gonna do. And just so many times like that, you were thinking, you know, what would he expect you to do? And of course, usually it was just go knock one more door, go make one more phone call, get up and keep fighting. But there are other things as well, and that continues to this day. So fast forward, it's 2022, I'm in the controller's office. But Pete Sikora, God bless him, of New York Communities for Change, decides that because I hesitated for 30 seconds in the controller's office before picking up like a Don Quixote lance and charging at BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager, and their $10 trillion, that what needs to happen is like a group of people have to come do like a sit-in in my office. And I've been around a little while. I heard it was climate families, so I'm like, okay, I can take care of this. And I got bagels and cream cheese. And the kids were easy to win over, of course. I had them eating out of my hand pretty quickly. But there was nothing I could do about the fact that Pete knew that John would be standing right behind them, and I would fold like a cheap suit and immediately do what was expected. And then even in the last few weeks, as we're down the stretch of this campaign, and we're out there just trying to do more shifts and being assigned by Working Families Party, like go do more shifts. You can cheat ban, right? Like, or minivan on your phone. You know, you could just pretend you knocked the door. You could just mark not home, and no one will know. But John will know that you did not actually attempt that door. And when you think about the fact that the Working Families Party was the margin of victory in electing Governor Hochul and crushed that limit that Andrew Cuomo tried to put in place to knock the ballot off, in some ways that's good strategy. We've got incredible candidates, but in so many ways it is just that spirit that has those people, moving their, making that next phone call and knocking that next door. Like, that's what you do. Yes, the strategy matters. Yes, the relationships matter, but you just go do the organizing. And I really think that was what keeps so many of us moving and keeps me moving. 2 quick final notes. One, the last campaign, like a lot of you that I worked on with John, was the Fight for 15. What I like the best, and it's really, I love connecting it to Marie and Harold's story, is that in the early days of that campaign, it was very hard to get fast food workers to go on strike for a $15 minimum wage that seemed like impossible. And what they did was they got those same flyers out that said, if you come to the meeting, you'll get housing. And because they used those flyers and were willing to say to people, come to the meeting, there'll be housing for you, 25 million people got their wages increased, like 50 million of them to $15 an hour. And then finally, I just want to say this. I know in moments like this, it's easy to think back to like what ACORN was in its glory days and the power and the possibility. But I got to tell you, like in this room today, you could feel that the legacy is something that is moving forward. And that is true in this beautiful family, like how lucky to get to work with Jake and Celeste and Lincoln and Anna, but also like Greg Casar, who comes out of ACORN, is going to Congress, y'all, and Eunices Hernandez in Los Angeles, who comes out of ACORN along with organizing, and a badass on the Los Angeles City Council. And that spirit is lifting us up and pushing us forward. And like maybe Bob is right that still fascism is just around the corner, but I feel blessed to get to organize with all of you. And I think the future is awfully bright. And we got John Kest to thank for so much of it.
Now, just a few more. Madeline.
Seems like we should have charts on the walls, doesn't it? So, at the ACORN staff meetings, my favorite part was when John and I would get together and just seeing him and seeing him be delighted to see me was so beautiful. I think that's what we all got and all wanted. And I loved ACORN staff meetings for seeing all of you, but especially for seeing John. And so, I don't know, I just wanted to say, first of all, could we wish Fran to get well soon? Can we do a 1, 2, 3, get well soon, Fran? How about just get well? 1, 2, 3. Get well! Fran, I don't know where you are, Fran, but get well. I went over to her house and tried to talk her into coming anyway. She tested positive again this morning, and I wanted her to come anyway. But, I guess I wanted to say something about the hard campaigns that John did, and that those of you who worked with John did with him. Because, it is true, I was competitive with John my entire ACORN career. He was in Hot Springs, I was in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, then, different places, but Chicago and New York. And I watched him do the hard stuff, and we did some great things in Chicago, but John and New York would take on these things. Like when we did Fight for 15, you know that Fight for 15 was an ACORN initiated campaign. I hope you know that. John and I were talking about what we were doing, and it was John who said we're going to do a one-day strike. And I said, you can't do a one-day strike. People will lose their jobs, and the whole thing will fall apart. And he said, no, we're going to take them back to work the next day and make sure they get their jobs back. And he did that. I mean, you all did that. It was phenomenal. He would do these numerical campaigns like the web workers. I mean, I was working with workfare workers in Wisconsin at the time, but you all in New York, you called for a vote to join the union, which didn't exist. And then you got workers to go in and vote for the union of web workers. And it was overwhelming and beautiful. And I don't even want to hear how you did that. I just am so impressed. When Edison came to town, you've been working with parents to convince them that their kids were not the problem. The schools were the problem. And then Edison, this for-profit school company, comes to town and says, oh, the schools are not good, we're gonna fix them. And we've got plenty of money. And it sounds really convincing. I saw that from Chicago and just said, oh no. And then the deal was, the school district said, oh, we'll have the parents vote whether they want Edison to come and take over the schools. And I thought from Chicago, oh no, not a vote of the parents, they're gonna go for this stuff. And you went into those schools and you told the parents the truth about what liars and cheaters Edison schools were. And you got them to vote to kick the charter schools out of town. We're organizers, we know how hard that is. I mean, these are numerical votes. You can't pretend with the things that John and New York did. It was impressive. So what I thought about is, how did John do that? And then once we had a CHD conference in Chicago or something, and ACORN members came from around the country to the CHD conference, we thought, well, you were in town, we'd do an action. So we got people on buses, and we were going to go into Whole Foods because they weren't paying a living wage, but they were getting a big subsidy. And this was like 1996 or something. So, so we went over to Whole Foods, and we unloaded the buses, but they were supposed to pull around the corner where Whole Foods management couldn't see us. They pulled up right in front in the parking lot. So we had a little ways to go, and I thought, oh, management's gonna see us coming, they're gonna lock the doors, forget this action. The New York members, New York members, I'm tall, I was in my 40s at the time. The New York members were shorter, some of them were a little heavy set, a little bit older, but they saw the problem, like I did. And they called to the other members and took off running for the door. I was running as fast as I could. They beat me there, got the doors open, and held them open for the rest of the crowd to come in. We took over the whole theater. I mean, that's the thing, is that fierceness. And, you know, the whole time, John could just stand back, smiling, that wonderful smile where he's really teasing you, with the crinkly eyes that you just long for that smile. He could just stand back and kind of look at you like, boy, you are some real slowpokes, aren't you? And that's that fierceness. God bless everybody in ACORN for that fierceness, you know. And I just want to say that the saddest part to me is not being able to watch the crinkles in John's eyes as he smiled get deeper and deeper with age. As we grow old together, I would have loved that. Thank you very much. How about a little John Vive la lucha sigue? John Vive la lucha sigue. John Vive la lucha sigue.
Almost time to grab dinner, but I know a million people want to say things about John. Let me just ask our former mayor, de Blasio, to say a few words.
That's the perfect note for what I want to say. How many people here felt you got stronger? You got more committed to making a change in the world? That you found something in yourself you didn't know you have? How many people felt that because you knew John Kest? Raise your hand. That's what I want to say. He isn't gone. He isn't gone. I don't know why we are sent prophets only to lose them too young. I don't need to tell anyone the history of how many people that was true of. But something about John, and I think it was everything from his ability to look us in the eye and set us straight and make us do things we didn't know we could do, but it was also that kind of rascal, that kind of bemused jokester at the same time. Like this guy, he was taking joy in the whole enterprise. I never felt it was harsh. I felt it was tough. I felt he was demanding, but I thought there was a joy and a love running through everything. But I'll only say this, in the interest of time. I look around the room, I see a victory. I really do, because no one gave up, first of all. I know so many of you, and I could tell so many stories about in the years since we lost John, what each of you did to carry on that legacy and make an impact. So I see victory. I think if we could tell John about all the things that changed in this city and in this state since he was gone, even John might not believe some of the things we all did together. But the last thing I'll say is he is still here because he made us all better. He really did. I can tell you, I can testify, I learned, sometimes I wanted to stop, not to stop because of John. I learned there was more strength, there was more possibility. I learned sometimes that dream other people told you was crazy and impossible is exactly where you needed to be. That's what John gave us. And it didn't go away. So let's go out there and hear that voice that's still in our minds. Do the next great thing. Thank you.
Not yet, right? Later, there'll be time. Absolutely later. Ambassador, Brother Patrick Gaspar.
Thanks, Steve, for inviting me up and for making sure that I went after de Blasio, not after Madeline. De Blasio I can handle, Madeline too much. Viva ACORN, viva! Viva ACORN, viva! Viva! You know, John Kest is the person who taught me how to lose. I didn't know how to lose. I had lost many campaigns, many efforts before I met John Kest, but I would go from defeat to another defeat. John taught me that defeat was just an opportunity to learn, to dig down, and to build from strength to strength so that ultimately you'd figure out exactly who you were fighting for, who you were trying to win for, and ultimately ladder up to some kind of meaningful material success that could be resilient and sustainable. I learned all that from John. But I'm gonna tell you something. It was hard for this brother to learn that from John Kest. First time I met John, I was a young Haitian organizer working on solidarity issues in my campaign, and there was this organization called ACORN that had a lot of Haitian Americans joining it out in Flatbush. And I was making common cause with them, and I had to figure out how to increase our coalition. I had this thing going on with this little union called 1199, and we were trying to build on this organizing with the diaspora. But I had to go talk to ACORN. I did not know that ACORN was John Kest. So the first time I rock out there, I think I'm gonna see a brother in this movement. I go out to Flatbush, and I go into an office where the stains on the rug are only outdone by the stains on the shirt being worn by the guy who got the desk. He's got like the crust from a Jamaican patty like dangling from his beard. And I'm thinking, there is like no flavor here at all. How's this gonna work? But of course, in short order, I figured out that this was the single greatest organizer of his generation in my city. And I was fortunate enough to learn from him. And I also had the good fortune to join him on the basketball court. So I knew that he was a great organizer, but not that great a basketball player. But for John, there was little distinction between the two things, because as an organizer, John was a gym rat, right? If you missed the first 100 shots, John was gonna put up another 100 shots. He did that on the basketball court, much to the chagrin of anyone on his team, but he also did that when he was playing three-dimensional chess across this city and across so many other cities and towns that desperately needed that strategic capacity. Bill Lipton taught me the distinction between an activist and an organizer. Bill would say, you know, right nowadays we have a lot of activists, we don't have a lot of organizers. Because we have folks who just kind of go to our tribal instinct to go and talk to folks in our own house of mirrors, which can sometimes be our own house of horrors. But being an organizer means discomfort, means going out there and expanding the possibility by talking to folks who are kind of radically different from you and finding some kind of alignment to push forward. John was an organizer's organizer in that sense. But for John, it wasn't like this remote thing. Yes, John did have what Eugene Debs would call an intelligent discontentment with the conditions of the world. But for John, there was like this humanity at the core, right? I learned how to knock on doors from John. I understood that you don't just knock on the door and have a conversation at the door. You gotta go in, you gotta have a meal, and you gotta learn the people, and through them you're gonna learn yourself and the movement. John really taught me that during the workfare campaign. Right, the horrific workfare campaign where I saw his kinetic compassion at work and his determination to not make a movement, but to transform lives in the moment. But I'll tell you as I close out that I didn't come here today because of the campaigns that I've worked on with John and with so many of you around here. I see Randy Weingarten. We're all part of the coalition of kick butt and get shit done. I didn't come here because of that. I came here because John was a brother, John was family, and John taught me how to care deeply and be present for those who care deeply about me and were present for me. For John, Fran, Jake, Jesse were the noun, the verb, the adjective of every sentence of his life. And if you were around him, you just felt the authenticity of that. You cared. You would find yourself caring deeply about the kind of progress that Jessie was making in her music lessons. You would care deeply about how Jake was doing in baseball because John was ever present. Even though he was pushing all of us 16 hours a day, he could manage to hold it all together. I'll never forget an occasion where I was with John and my toddler son. We were stuck in a snowpocalypse in Albany, and I'm working doggedly on this campaign, and I think John's gonna kick my ass if I'm not focused on the campaign, and I find him spending all of his time with my kid, and helping my kid understand what it is exactly that we are sacrificing for in those moments. It was beautiful. I'm gonna give up the mic, but as I do that, there were lots of things said about food and John, and Albany experiences in food, I'll tell you a little bit of a funny story. You know, John liked to say, there's one John saying I didn't hear today at all, which was, go figure it out. Right? Figure it out. So one day, I'm with John as an organizer, and we have thousands of members. We did a joint lobby day. Bertha, you'll remember this. We did a joint lobby day together, SCIU 1199, with ACORN. And we go up there to give them hell. But hell fell on us, because there was like 10 feet of snow that fell in Albany. We were kind of stuck up there, and we had thousands of members that we had not prepared adequately for, as in, we didn't have any damn food to give them, and we couldn't get out of Albany. And John says to me, what the hell are we gonna do? And I say to him, figure it out. and about an hour later, all of our members had fried chicken. I didn't know where it came from, but it was good fried chicken. Everybody was content, and we eventually got out of there. Well, the next day, I'm having a conversation with Lee Saunders, who was then leader of DC 37 ASPE New York, and his crew had been up there for lobby day. And I said, how'd it go for you? He said, well, it was really great, except somebody stole our damn chicken. That was John Kest. He found a way. Beautiful brother, beautiful man. Viva John Kest, viva ACORN always.
All right, there's a million more people with stories. Fran's going to want to say a few words too. We'll figure out a way to get her on the screen. But we are going to break for dinner, which is buffet that you can, there's 2 stations. So I think we'll try to keep it somewhat organized here. There's also in the back wine, beer, seltzer. So please help yourself, and we'll reconvene in a bit. So thanks everyone for being here.
Okay, we can all gather. Part 2. All right, thank you for that excellent video, Madeline Adamson. Madeline Adamson, stand up! Bean, stand up! Okay, ACORN, let's gather. Let's gather in, gather in, gather in. Madeline Talbot. Madeline Talbot. Everyone does what you do. Sit down, sit down. No one's afraid of Madeline anymore, so. Madeline, pretend to be your old self, and then tell everyone to sit down. Sit down! Sit down! Yes.
I'm going to sit with the boss.
Okay, part 2. All right, before we start, I want to take a little privilege. My name is Jen Kern. I work for ACORN from 1993 to 2008, and I'm proud to work for ACORN's party, the Working Families Party. Dorothy Amati reminded me earlier that we started WFP to be the party for ACORN members to take political power. So happy about that through line. Okay, so we are all held together by the glue of history and struggle, but some people are really the glue. And somebody's birthday is today, and I think when I say Carolyn Carr, we all think glue. Carolyn Carr was there from 1971 to the bitter end. So can we do it? Happy birthday! Happy birthday to you! Thank you for holding us together, even when we were falling apart. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do before we just jump in, there's really no program here. We're really just going to tell stories and be together and hang out. But we want to have a moment where we bring into the room ACORN leaders and staff who are not with us, who are resting in power. They're here with us. And I'm just going to open the floor. I think maybe I'll start. And I would say Katie Fitzgerald. The floor is open. ACORN members and staff who are no longer with us but are resting in power are here today. Just yell out the names. Helen Miller. Carol Hemingway. Joel Louis Brown. Ted Thomas. Robert Wright. John Bean. John Bean. Jim Fleischman. Charlie Beth. Charlie Beth. Mary Hutchinson. Haley Somerville. Joyce Campbell. Steve Ogden. I said
Maybe he's just out of town. He's not feeling well.
Betty Wilkins. Angie Wilkerson. Alicia Gaddis. Lady Hanging. Gloria Wilson. Johnny Pugh. Excellent. Any others you want to bring? Terry Ann. Jeff, say that again. Josh Walker. Josh Walker. Peter Sensia. Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. Okay, Weston, where are you? Okay. Okay, Keith Kelleher. We're going to start with you. And Keith's going to try to warm us up for the night.
Thank you. Are you laughing? I didn't say it's funny yet. Okay. So, we are going to do an audience participation thing right here. So everybody sitting down back there, I'm talking about you over there by the food people. Please take a chair, have a seat. You're not listening to me. You! Sit down! Okay, here we go. Everybody ready? By the way, my name is Keith Kelleher. I was with ACORN. Believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, I was an ACORN member in 1979 on the southwest side of Detroit City. And what? My membership card, I have a 25-year ACORN pin right here, 25 years on set, okay? So now we're gonna see everybody here how long you have been with ACORN, okay? So, if you work for ACORN for less than 2 years, please stand up. Please stand up. Okay, there's one back there. There we go. And remain standing. Remain standing. Okay? If you work for ACORN for 2 to 5 years, please stand up. There we go. Let's hear it for him now. Come on. If you work for ACORN for 6 to 8 years, please stand up. Remain standing. 9 to 10 years, please stand up. And remain standing. 10 to 15 years, please stand up. Let's hear it from some of the veterans now. 16 to 18 years, please stand up. Okay. 19 to 20 years, please stand up. Stand up, 19 to 20. And here's the final one, 20 or more years, please stand up. Now remain standing, remain standing. Now sit down. If you started ACORN in the 2005 to 2008, in that time period, sit down. Okay? 2000 to 2005, sit down if you were employed in that period. Okay? 95 to 2000, please sit down. Okay? 1990 to 95, please sit down. 85 to 90, please sit down. 80 to 85, please sit down. Okay, we're getting down to it now. 75 to 80, please sit down. Oh, wow. Now we're really going to get down to it. 1974, please sit down. 19... The last few people, okay. I want anybody who was from 1970 to 1974 to come to the front of the room. Come to the front of the room. Come on, come on. Come on down. You may already be a winner. Come on down. Okay, I'm going to just ask you a question, sir. Say your name and when you started with ACORN.
Gary Delgado, 1971.
Barbara Friedman, I started in 1973, and Gary Delgado interviewed me here in
Steve Kest, I started in 1973 in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Oh, okay, good. I'm glad you're here. And wonderful to see everybody. Yeah. It's been a great Yeah, but I came in January. You came later. Okay. Oh, I didn't say that. Carolyn Carr is my
Okay, let's do a chant. We're fired up, we won't take it no more. We're fired up, we won't take it no more. We're fired up, we won't take it no more. We're fired up, we won't take it no more. We're fired up, we won't take it no more. We're fired up, we won't take it no more. Fired up, we won't take it no more. Fired up, we won't take it no more. Thank you. Give yourselves a big hand of applause.
And now Fran, who's been watching all of this by Zoom, is going to hopefully come into the picture. Oh, Fran! Put her on the... You're on mute, Fran. We're ready to go.
There we go.
No. Fran, you're on mute. But it's the story of our life for the last 3 years.
Try
Send a memo. Okay. Use the phone. All right. Yeah.
Can you hear me? I'm Franz Reich. I started ACORN. I was with ACORN in 1977. New York ACORN. And I want to say that I texted Jeff Elmer at some point and I asked him how many people were there and how many members were there. And he texted me back and said, John members? So, for those of you that remember John, he was inflating numbers a lot. And I would have some competition of hello? I get
You have to speak into the phone.
I have to speak into this. Okay, this is typical ACORN, so I'm here constantly. Okay, so I don't know what you heard, what you didn't hear. I won't go over what I was saying, but thank you all so much for sharing your stories about John and your love for John and for the work that everyone does, continuing John's legacy, ACORN's legacy. Some of you made me laugh and some of you made me cry. And, you know, like I said before, which I'm not sure you heard, I wish I was in the room to give you all a big hug. I'm Franz Streich. I worked with ACORN from 1977 to 2001, and John and I started Philly ACORN and New York ACORN together, and it was so great to see Julia and the other ACORN members there from NYCC. My quick ACORN story that I'll share is just one of my favorites, is in Philly ACORN when, Steve, is this the time for this now?
Yes.
was in Philly ACORN after John and I had done a street walking in Southwest Philly, blocking the trolley barns. He had done it coordinated at the same time. I think we had I don't know what we had then because there weren't cell phones. Up in North Philly, we later found out we had blocked 50,000 commuters from getting to work the next day. And then we went to City Hall, this was when Mayor Rizzo was in, and did a street blocking there, and one of our leaders was handed a subpoena, and she said she was gonna stuff it with another worthless piece of paper, her marriage license, and she stuffed it in her bra. So that's one of my favorite ACORN stories, and I guess the other one is when we thought we were organizing kids for summer jobs. Remember our summer youth program organizing that we would do? And we'd spend weeks organizing kids to come in from all over, North Philly, Northeast Philly. We had no leaders yet, and John has everybody in this, friends meeting house, and he decides to kill time before we had a speaker, getting the kids to try and out-chant each other. So we almost started a riot between the Catholic schoolgirls from uptown and all of our, other kids from downtown. And then we began to march, and we lost all the kids because we had no leaders and we didn't know what the hell we were doing. We did more money for summer jobs. So anyway, great to see you all, and I wish I was there having fun with everyone, and thanks again for sharing the job stories.
Okay, so as Fran so perfectly exemplified, we don't really need a program, we just need to tell stories. So that's all we're doing. And Jonathan and I are just going to warm people up by doing another little Keith Kelleher style exercise. You don't have to stand up, but we're just going to throw out, experiences you may or may not have had at ACORN. And if you've had those experiences, please clap or raise your hand or otherwise indicate solidarity. All right, please let us know if you ever learned to drive a stick under duress when you worked for ACORN. Painful memories, true memories.
This should be for almost everyone in the room. Raise your hand or stand up if you were ever on a bus at ACORN that broke down. Yeah, the whole room. I don't know, it was just, we literally, there aren't bus companies that exist that have buses that run, or, yeah, I don't know. Still.
We actually contemplated having 3 questions on this. If your bus broke down 2 or more times on the way to your destination, if your bus broke down 3 to 5 times, Bertha's still standing, okay. Okay, 10 times, yes, Tanisha! Okay, please indicate if you've ever tried to use the postage meter to backdate a grant application and then talk to meet a deadline. Nobody would ever do that here. Nobody would ever do that here. It was just a throwaway question.
Whatever we had to do. All right. I mean, look, we all know ACORN had its, staff issues, whatever. But raise your hand if you've ever had a staffer, and this is probably a lot of you, if you've ever had a staffer quit before the end of their first day. Trial by fire, what can we say?
Strong work is management was one of our strong suits. I learned everything I know about management at ACORN. Okay, this is maybe a smaller group, but it's pretty powerful. Let us know if you've ever been pulled over with a truck full of cash. This actually came to me last night when we were hanging out. A truck full of cash, any cash. All right, Amy, sure. Okay, this is probably more universal. If you ever wish you had a truck full of cash so you could pay payroll at ACORN.
Oh!
Tell the story.
Okay, I'm honestly not a good storyteller, but I will say, so Carol, my good friend Carolyn Siegel, who's here, her mother lived in Detroit. I packed up my car from Chicago in 1990 and drove to Detroit to reopen our office there. Her wonderful mother gave me a car to use, like a car she wasn't using. I was a 24-year-old organizer. I didn't do things like register the car in my name. So I drove her car as if it was my car. It wasn't registered in my name. And Madeline said, or somebody said, we all had to run bingo operations to raise money. So we had one night a week of a bingo operation at a big bingo hall in Detroit. Full of smoke, pull tabs, you run around, give people their pull tabs, everybody has all their little figurines. It was a wild scene, awesome. So at the, like $2,000 circulate through the bingo game every night or something. And so I had canvas bags full of small dollar amount bills in canvas bags in the trunk of this car that wasn't registered in my name. So, and I don't know why the police pulled me over, but the police pulled me over, and at some point they opened the trunk, and then like 2 or 3 more cop cars came over and surrounded my car. They took, well, I felt it was my car, even though I'd never registered in my name. And so they took the car, they took the money. I don't know how I got home, I do not remember. And that was kind of the story. Eventually they investigated it and discovered it was the organization's money from the bingo game. And when I walked into this police station, they were all laughing and counting out the $2,000 that were mostly single and $5 and whatever, and I collected the money and we kept doing bingo. All right.
All right, thanks, Amy. Okay, so this one is a little unfair because some of you started organizing in the time before the internet. Raise your hand if you've ever done an action on the wrong building. Come on, you guys know you've done it.
I don't know, I was with Mitch Klein earlier today, and we were talking about a woman who threw a rock at us, and he was like, hey, it was fair. It was her neighbor that we were trying to hit. Okay, raise your hand if you have a mysterious missing year in your tax history. Several missing years. We should do like 3 to 4 missing years, 5 to 8 missing years. Okay, that's a painful one.
All right, this is just like a normal day on the job, but raise your hand if you've been bit by a dog on turf. More people than I thought. Nice, nice.
Strong word. It's a growing pain type of thing. Yeah. Okay, raise your hand if you've been accused of being a socialist before being accused of being a socialist was cool. I think that's all of us. I remember Madeline saying, I don't care as long as they spell her name right.
I'm out. I'm done with you.
Yep. Right. Yeah, that's a whole category. We're getting to that. Okay, 2 more. Raise your hand if you have had to do a funder visit or a meeting with a banker or a politician at the last minute completely unprepped. Nice. I like to see a lot of that. Yeah. Right. And lastly, raise your hand if you're still owed a paycheck. Okay, and now Amy, the category is best action. Okay, so we're gonna open up to stories, but this is a good one. Best action with a live animal. Anyone got a story? Anyone got a story? Yeah, anyone got a story? Yeah.
Sorry, before we do that, I know Dorothy has to leave, and I know she wanted to say a few words. But that's cool. So I'm going to turn the over Dorothy Amati, who is one of the founders of the New York ACORN.
You know, I'm so all right. I'm so proud to be here tonight, and I just want to say that when I was living in Nigeria for 7.5 years, and I came back, and somebody knocked on my door when I lived on ACORN Street in Brooklyn, and asked me if I wanted to join ACORN. Do I like the way my community look? I said, no, I don't like it, because where I live on Macon Street, there was a pile of garbage. It was so high, you couldn't even see the train that ran down Broadway. And when they finally cleaned that lot up, they found dead bodies and all that trash. I said, no wonder this neighborhood stinks so much. It had a bad smell all the time. So I joined ACORN. I went door knocking for other people to join and everything. And as time went on, you know, our office was in various places and everywhere. But then when ACORN, I was the national secretary for ACORN. And as the national secretary, we used to have board meetings, you know, in New Orleans, Chicago, various places and everything. And when I would go to Chicago, Barack Obama was our pro bono lawyer. He'd be waiting for me to sign, you know, documents and checks and stuff like that. So as time went on, you know, we helped other people get elected to positions all across this country, campaigning for them. And as time went on, you know, we just did everything we could to help people. Then we branched out from being ACORN. ACORN, we did homesteading, where we got these lots, these buildings cleaned up, and we built affordable housing. We did a lot of things to help people out. And one time I had to go down to DC to testify about the Welfare to Work program, right? And what I was saying about the Welfare to Work program, I said that if you have children and you need welfare, okay, you get the welfare, but when your kids grow up, try to go out and get a job. And some people on the panel, you know, they were saying that, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You need to shut your mouth up and everything. We need that welfare. Why should you continue to be welfare? Welfare is not something for all your life. So when I got off of welfare, I got a job. I worked in a group home for girls out in Queens. Then I went to school. I finished my bachelor's. I went to LIU and I got my master's degree. So I mean, like, I tell people there's a lot you could do to help yourself. And even when we cleaned up those buildings in East New York, did the homesteading and everything, I didn't do the homesteading because I could have did the homesteading and owned the house, but my kids, they didn't do it with me, you know. So what I did, Peter Woods came and took me to East New York and showed me this building. And then they built a whole top floor for me. I had 6 bedrooms, living room, kitchen, and 2 full bathrooms, not half bathroom. Because I had 8 children at that time, but not all of them lived with me. But the thing is, you know, like, there's a lot that can be done to help people and everything, but then when you talk to some people, they don't want to understand what's going on and how to go about it and everything. So, you know, like, I'm so proud that I joined ACORN and became a member of ACORN. A lot of my members here from Brownsville and Brooklyn, they're here, you know, today. And, you know, I'm just so proud of everything that we've done today. And then another thing I want to tell you, when we used to go to DC and demonstrate, we went into one of the financial places down there. And when we went in there, they said, you can't come in here, because they were trying to boost the interest rate down up and everything. And we went in there, and then we went in there and they said, well, you ain't got no business in this meeting. This is a private meeting. I said, well, that meeting concerned us, so that's why we're in here. So they called. So they called the police on us to arrest us. So when we got downstairs in the lobby, the police came and they said, you know, you ain't got no business in here and everything. And then they said, why are you here? So when we told the police why we were there, that they were getting ready to raise the interest rate and everything, and then nobody would have money to, you know, pay their bills or anything they had to do. They said, for real? I said, yeah. So when we told them that, they said, look, y'all just go on your way. Okay, you know, it's so much that's happened, and then we went down there one time for something else. I forgot what we did in D.C., but Newt Gingrich chased us all over D.C. Huh? Yeah, he tried to chase us, but we chased him too. But the thing is, you know, like that song said, who are we? We're ACORN. We're the mighty, mighty ACORN. And we are not gonna stop fighting for what we need, our neighborhood needs, because our neighborhoods are very important to us. And even now with these elections that are going on now, my son is in Georgia now. He's talking about coming back to New York. He said down in Georgia, because of this thing with Warnock and Walker, he said that he can't get a job, he can't get food stamps, he can't get unemployment, he can't get health care for him and his son or nothing. So he want to come back to New York. So, you know, like we just have to, you know, keep on fighting, and I really pray that the Democrat control the Senate and the House, because these Republicans, they don't care about nobody but themselves. And really, what they don't understand is the things that you're doing to us, it ain't black and minorities. You got family members that need the things that you're trying to put an end to. So let us continue to, you know, stand up and fight and let people know that they need to understand what's going on and go out there and fight for their rights.
Thank you, Dorothy. I don't think it can be acknowledged enough the impact that ACORN Housing has had in New York especially, but I'm sure a lot of places. You know, when someone like Dorothy, who has come up from the 80s in ACORN Housing, did the sweat equity, raised her children, literally generations of our members, still to this day live in mutual housing. Where's this meeting? There she is, right on cue. But just the lasting impact and legacy of what ACORN Housing has done here in New York, I think is, I think really can't even be comprehended. Like, it's like that many folks, there's members here that live in ACORN Housing to this day. So we'll turn it back to you, Jen.
John, we need to continue researching for houses. A lot of buildings in Brooklyn all over. We need to get back to that.
Thanks, Dorothy. Thanks for coming. So we were hoping to start the hangout around now. So we're just going to throw it open for a minute. I'm going to put a hold on the live animal story because it could come up. So those of us who attended the year-end, year-begin YUIB meeting knows that we had a thing called You Should Have Been There When. So in the spirit of You Should Have Been There When, which is, you know, what it sounds like, you just come up and you tell a story, and it starts with You Should Have Been There When. So we're just going to open the floor to anyone who wants to tell a story of their time at ACORN. You should have been there when.